but in retrospect, the difference between my mother and father as I saw them and as they were when they first got together and had their lives together, and say until the crash, was just the difference between night and day. And I never knew them without my mother being the dominant person, with quite a loud voice and ordering people around, and my father being this sweet, gentle, quiet man. But what was so this was how I saw them.
So after he lost everything and through the Depression, he was having a pretty hard time, himself. With his health and mental state and everything. But then he managed to get out of it for some time.
Bit by bit, he got out of it. But meanwhile, somebody had to take over. So it was my mother, whereas obviously...
And when he was working again, was he living at home still? Or?
Oh, yeah. And commuting to New York every day. Yeah. And, but it was, I just had this totally different picture of who they were from, I never had any idea of who they had been. And as I said here once when I was starting to write some of this stuff down, that Daddy was tall, not very graceful, maybe awkward, but...
What was his height? How tall?
He was probably about 6'2" or 6'3".
Okay.
I never saw him run. He was always formally clad, shirt, tie, vest, and suit, with a silk handkerchief in his vest, jacket pocket.
You ever see him in pajamas?
Maybe once in a while. My mother and father never slept in the same bedroom. And that's, I'm sure, because they were paralyzed about having another child, because everything had crashed. So, which didn't mean that they were cold to each other. They always kissed each other every morning and every night, and as I said, I never heard them argue. And there was always great affection, I mean, not great affection, but really warmth between them. But obviously, the idea of, having another child in a family that you couldn't feed was unacceptable. The little bit of the silk handkerchief that came out of his pocket was always perfectly folded, very elegant. It wasn't, not flamboyantly. He always had a pocket watch, a beautiful silver pocket watch, which he would click open and then put back in his vest pocket. He wore long underwear winter and summer. At home in the summer heat, he might leave off a jacket, but never a shirt. Always long-sleeve shirts with cufflinks, and never without a tie. He always wore a morning suit to go to weddings with spats. He had a collapsible top hat for opera going and theater openings, fancy silk top hat, I said all that. He had a beautiful collection of canes, and if we went for a Sunday walk, just around in Bellhaven on the sidewalk, he would choose one, and I remember particularly one very beautiful black ebony one, and he would swing it very elegantly as we walked along. And he had a long, narrow face, well, you've seen his picture up there, and thin, kind of dirty dishwater blonde. My mother described it once as, so I've always thought of dirty dishwater. I mean, we don't have dishwaters now, but we always used a dishpan to wash the dishes in. And he had lovely blue eyes, light blue eyes like bananas. He always wore a hat outdoors, a fedora, always carefully creased.
Were those big round top hats or not?
No,
What
not,
kind of
no,
hat?
no, those are derbies. I don't
Okay.
think he ever had a derby, or at least I never saw it.
Uh-huh.
No, it was a fedora, you know, the kind that,
Right, fold
Felt.
in the middle.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. He always tilted it to ladies in the street, but
Mhm.
not in any lascivious way or anything
Mhm.
like that. Always very, very gentlemanly.
Mhm.
He had absolutely beautiful manners.
Mhm.
Really, not anything that would make you feel uncomfortable. It would
Mhm.
just, it was so natural for
Mhm.
him,
Cary Grant, sort of.
maybe, but um, but not obtrusive at all.
Right,
Just
yeah.
so gracefully done.
Mhm.
Not flirtatiously,
Mhm.
but nice. And when he came to visit us in Milan, the one thing he wanted was a Borsalino hat, which he hadn't had since before everything fell apart. And I remember
Mhm.
thinking, well, that's, you know, you come to Italy and you want a hat?
Mhm.
But actually, of men's, of fedoras, that's
Mhm.
what that kind of hat is called. The Borsalino was the most elegant one of all. And obviously, for years,
Mhm.
he had worn nothing but Borsalinos when he was, you know, and that was, and I never appreciated that or how much it must have meant to him or anything like that. Did I say anything else? Well, sweet. He was a gentle, a very gentle, sweet-natured man, really with a very, very sweet nature. I never heard him raise his voice. I never heard him shout at anybody ever. He had a nice kind of breathy laugh, and he had very good humor. He, when he sneezed, he always said, "Russia." I mean, somehow or other, that's what his sneezes sounded like, and I loved that. He loved vaudeville, and he had gone a great deal to vaudeville shows and plays before he met Mother. Mother didn't go for vaudeville. That was kind of crass compared to drama, you know, Shakespeare and that kind of stuff. He played the piano very nicely, but he played all kinds of wonderful things that I just loved. Sigmund Romberg, and you wouldn't, this wouldn't mean much to you, but Sigmund Romberg's music, Victor Herbert. Do you ever remember were you around when we would have the croquet sur l'herbe? No, you had left
don't
home by
remember.
then, right? Well, anyway, just sort of wonderful old-fashioned songs, and we would
Right.
gather around the piano and sing. He had a
Those are
wonderful,
like Irish or?
no, they were songs, I think, probably from vaudeville shows.
Okay.
So he played mostly that on the piano, but played it very nicely. A wonderful one called Slippery James. I love to hear him play that. He he voted for Woodrow Wilson, Democrat, of course. And then I think it was, I don't know when he switched to Republican, but I do remember he then, when I was growing, I remember when Alf Landon was running for president, he was a Republican. And I remember going into the Landon headquarters on Greenwich Avenue, which doesn't mean that he voted for him, but anyway. To my horror, he, in the 1950s, thought Joseph McCarthy was right on because of his anti-communism. And of course, you know, by that time, I was just so horrified that he could possibly think that way. He read the New York Times and the New York Herald Tribune, either the New York Times or the Herald Tribune, every single morning, and then on the train on the way into New York, and in the evening the New York Sun, which doesn't exist anymore, on the way out. And then he read the Saturday Evening Post, which was a magazine that had a lot of good reading and writing. It was a great, wonderful magazine. The Reader's Digest. What else did he do? I don't know. But he was this quiet, gentle man. Oh, and he always wore pince-nez. He would pull his glasses out of his pocket, just like Franklin Roosevelt,
Right,
and
yeah.
put them on. I finally located the source of pince-nez, and a woman who had them sent them to me. she has a business,
Mm-hmm.
and my nose is such a pathetic nose that they wouldn't stay on, so it won't work for me. Anyway.